Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is a beautifully crowded lecture hall. How often have you been in such a crowded room here at university? Not so many times, huh? It's beautiful to see the room that filled. It shows that there's great interest into the topic that we are starting to tackle from today onwards. So, welcome to the introduction lecture of the dialogue series, The Healing Arts Encounters in Art and Medicine, here at the Berlin University of the Arts, in collaboration with the International Society for Arts and Medicine and the Network Art in Medicine at the Charité Medical Center Berlin. My name is Lukas Feireiss, and I take responsibility as the organizer and host of the series of dialogues on art and medicine. And I work in the field of contemporary cultural production or knowledge production. This is even better. So my name is Lukas Feireiss. So I work at intersections, somehow in the field of cultural production and knowledge production, at the intersection of art and architecture and science in both theory and practice. And for the last 2 years, I have been pioneering transdisciplinary and multimodal teaching and learning formats here at the university. And these formats are designed to reach individuals from all fields and faculties, from all universities, and the general public, transcending disciplinary boundaries. And thereby I regard my job basically as a sort of facilitator of conversations, or a door opener or gate opener and a bridge builder, because I firmly believe that the academic discourses should open much more to the general public and become more inclusive and less exclusive. There's way too much gatekeeping happening. Moreover, I think even beyond opening doors and building bridges, that we need to somehow become Trojan horses in the system. So I encourage all of you here in this room and also listening to us online to actually crash parties, to go to places you're not invited to go to places you're not supposed to be, and to become curious about the stuff you're not interested in. So as the son of a medical doctor and as a curator, I'm extremely pleased to explore the relationship between art and medicine with our distinguished guests and all of you throughout the semester in an open discourse involving perspectives from medicine, science, and art. And you, the esteemed audience here, are very warmly invited to really actively participate in it. So today is the beginning of a series of discursive encounters and the establishment of a safe and brave space for dialogue and action, a third space that, in the exploration of art and medicine, creativity and healing, aspires to contribute to a better understanding of ourselves and no less than our existence. All the more, I'm delighted that we can open up this conversation with a very special guest, Christopher Bailey, the Arts and Health Lead of the World Health Organization. Welcome, Chris. Can you hear me?
I can. Shall I begin?
Yeah, 1 second. Let me get you all over the screen with the help of my colleague. Before you start, Chris, first of all, I'm so excited and thrilled and honored to have you with us today. Not so sure. Once he's speaking. Okay. And to start with, I have to admit, or I tell also the crowd here, that I contacted Chris out of the blue for the first time sometime this late summer to tell him about the series, and I absolutely did not expect him to get back to me, but he did immediately, actually, and now he's joining us online, so it's really incredible. But Chris, before I give you the word, let me briefly introduce you to our audience. So Christopher Bailey is the Arts and Health Lead at the World Health Organization. He co-founded the Healing Arts Initiative, which aims to establish a global network of research centers to explore the scientific basis and effective practices supporting the health benefits of the arts, particularly their impact on physical, mental, and social well-being, with a strong emphasis on assisting underserved communities worldwide. But, and this is so beautiful, and this fits so wonderfully in our transdisciplinary approach here, Chris, Bailey's educational background includes studies at Columbia and Oxford universities, as well as the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. So after a career as a professional actor and playwright, he joined first the Rockefeller Foundation as their research manager, and then later joined the World Health Organization, where his work centers around amplifying health-related messages and fosters solidarity on health issues. So Chris, the stage is all yours, and thank you once again for being here.
Oh, my pleasure, and it was great meeting you. Yes, to be honest, I'm always surprised when people are surprised that I respond to them. I think as international civil servants, our role is to serve. So I would encourage all of you who are interested in the work that we do to connect with me on LinkedIn and Facebook or whatever, and I would love to hear about what you're doing and what your aspirations are as well. So yes, as Lukas mentioned, I'm in charge of the Arts and Health program at WHO. I am a co-founder of the Jameel Arts and Health Lab, which is that healing arts initiative that Lukas mentioned, and it's a consortium of research centers around the world looking at building out robust studies of effective practice of arts interventions for community and clinical health, their scalability, their ability to reach underserved populations, but also the foundational biochemistry and neuroscience of why it works. And I'll give you just one example. A number of months ago, I was in Nigeria helping oversee their National Arts and Health Week, and I was talking to some clinicians and researchers in the National Sickle Cell Center Institute in Lagos. And sickle cell anemia, as you may know, is endemic in Africa and in people of African descent. The genetic malformation of the corpuscle creates this sickle-like shape, which ironically is a shape that the malaria plasmodium doesn't like. So in a strange twist of evolution, children in malaria-prone areas have a better chance of survival if they have sickle cell than not. But the result is you have this population that has this crippling disease, and when it is inflamed, the sickle cells begin to lock into each other and form these blood dams in the joints, which create massive swelling and acute, intense pain. So what we found in Nigeria through these programs is that the deep aesthetic experience, music that moves you, dance that moves you, creates a dopamine effect, which literally dilates the blood vessels, releasing the blood dams and relieving the attack of sickle cell anemia and the acute pain. So that's one example of seeing a direct connection between the deep aesthetic experience and health. I personally think that the medical examples, although there are many of them, are less interesting than the mental health examples. And I think the best way of describing this is going back to the WHO definition of health itself. In our 1947 Constitution, WHO defines health as not merely the absence of disease and infirmity, but the attainment of the highest level of physical, mental, and social well-being. And when we put it into that context, then I think it becomes a little bit more intuitively obvious what the health benefits of the arts can be. And I think in many cases, it's not really about curing anything. It's about healing. The arts may not cure, but it helps us curate our lives. So when we face misfortune, when we face difficult circumstances, we can create a meaning from it. There are two operative quotes from Carl Jung that I always go back to. The first is, loneliness is not the absence of people. Loneliness is the inability to express what matters to us most. And the second quote is, meaning is what allows us to endure. And I think we've seen this over and over again, this interplay between the reality we create for ourselves, how we make sense of the world through the senses, through aesthetic engagement, and at the same time, the bridge to our physical well-being as well. An example is dementia patients. As far as we know, there's very little evidence to suggest that music or dance or visual arts actually reverses the damage of Alzheimer's disease. But what we have seen is that in the midst of the deepest aesthetic experience, while an Alzheimer's patient is playing the piano, suddenly the expression relaxes, they go into the flow state, and they find themselves suddenly, instead of in that anxious, tight feeling of wondering where they've come from in the past or what the future has in store, they're fully involved in the present moment of song. And there are moments of recognition, there are moments of connection, which is not only a blessing and an act of grace for the person managing Alzheimer's, but for the caregivers as well, because they see a glimpse into the person that they thought was lost. When you attach an MRI to a patient with Alzheimer's and they're involved in that deep aesthetic experience, it gives us a clue as to what's happening. Instead of what happens is, when you listen to music, when you are deeply engaged, it is not a localized activity in the brain, it is an all-brain experience. So if you have neurological damage, such as happens with Alzheimer's, it doesn't actually cure anything, it doesn't rebuild the damaged neural pathways, but because it's an all-brain experience, it finds detours while that aesthetic experience is happening. And that's what creates this temporary but beautiful window into the mindscape of the person that you thought had disappeared. We are advancing this work with the goal of, within 5 years, to convene the very first joint convening of ministers of health and ministers of culture, where we will present the gathered evidence from around the world and our policy recommendations to encourage what I would call a revolution of the heart, a massive investment in the arts specifically for the improvement of the health of individuals and communities. But since I don't have a lot of time, I'm going to end with a little personal anecdote. I've given you sort of an overview. When I first started this program, I was diagnosed with terminal glaucoma. I was losing my sight. And I was filled with an incredible sense of loss, of frustration that I was about to build this program and I wouldn't be able to see it through, quite literally, because of this condition. And this sense of crushing loss of what I had enjoyed in the past, the sense of beauty of the world was now denied to me. And the sense of dread of what was going to happen in the future was tearing me apart. And it actually wasn't until I found myself in London and I was trying to get to a concert at St. Martin in the Fields just off Trafalgar Square. And it was before the pandemic. There was a huge crowd. And I was pushed to the wrong side of Trafalgar Square and found And to escape the crowd, I went inside and I found refuge in the galleries. And because I couldn't see very well, I didn't know where I was. And I hesitated because museums had given me such pleasure all my lives. I didn't want to expose myself to these paintings that had given me such pleasure and not be able to see them. And I found myself in this one gallery with these monumental paintings of seascapes. And I looked carefully and I saw silhouettes of ships, of mist, of fog, of waves. And I began to taste salt water on my cheek. And I thought, is this the sea spray, or is it the tears coming down from my eyes? Because it was at that moment that I realized that I was in the Turner room, and through the vision of this long dead artist's eyes and the objects that he created and my own experience, I saw that he was painting the world the way I was currently seeing it. And for the first time, I could imagine that the way I see the world could be considered as beautiful. Just as you willingly close your eyes to better savor a glass of red wine, just as you willingly close your eyes to better embody a beautiful piece of music, just as you willingly close your eyes to trace the gentle slope of a lover's forearm, so too do I now embrace the closing of my eyes to better share this moment with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. Words cannot describe my gratitude to you, and I've literally goosebumps. So you're most invited to stick around. I'll go back to the presentation now. And again, thanks for taking the time. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to all the students that are coming here and all the ones that are interested. So thanks once again from all of us.
Thank you. It was a real pleasure.
So, yeah, we couldn't have had a more powerful entree into our topic. So, let's try to figure this out together a little bit more. There has always been a close connection between art and medicine, actually. And it's not without reason that medicine is also synonymously referred to as the healing art, or Heilkunst in German, encompassing all human knowledge and skills related to the origin, treatment, and prevention of illnesses and the attainment of well-being. And if we consider art in its broadest sense as the cultivated activity of individuals based on knowledge, based on skills, based on practice, perception, imagination, and intuition, it also seems to be a very fitting definition for the daily one-on-one medical work with patients. So let's take a closer look at this intersection, because I firmly believe that the innovations primarily occur at the hybrid intersections of different disciplines and sectors, such as between art and medicine, or more broadly between art and science, or between Wissenskunst and Wissenschaft in German, between the knowledge of the arts and the knowledge of sciences, two distinct yet equally valuable epistemological approaches to the world, approaches to understanding us and the world. However, since the early modern period, along with a broader trend away from unification and towards specialization, art and science have progressively moved apart and have been regarded as two fundamentally different cultures and domains, separate and unable to communicate with each other. Thereby, science is, to this day, usually regarded as the sole authoritative and dependable source of knowledge. And the certainty stems from its foundation in concrete facts, established laws, and empirical evidence. And these pieces of evidence and observed facts are considered not only representations of reality, but also the fundamental elements upon which knowledge is constructed. Scientists who formulate their theories based on these unadulterated facts and observations are assumed to maintain objectivity and remain free from personal values or biases. And science today is finding the evidence base for the health benefits of the arts. Real, quantitative, and not solely qualitative research. This helps position artists and scientists as necessary partners towards health and well-being for all. But truth be told, I believe that the arts themselves are by nature non-evidence-based practices. And this is precisely their unique virtue. If anything, the arts are ambivalence-based. What evidence is for the science is ambivalence for the arts. Art rejects linear readings. It allows for complex emotions and even multiple contradictory layers of meaning. Art is weird. It's transversal. It's non-linear. It's not straight. It's queer. It's disruptive. It's indeterminate. Even the most mathematically organized and structured piece of music is per se unfathomable and cannot be broken down to some kind of objective truth. And even the most hardcore scientist begins with a sophisticated guess, a conjecture, a hypothesis, a theory. Thus, even scientific knowledge is constructed of conjecture and speculation, and though filtered through reality, remains forever conjectural and speculative. Interestingly, the definition of art and science has been significantly shaped by the contrast in their characteristics. Art is often considered personal, subjective, internal, and intuitive, while science is viewed as impersonal, objective, and external. And this duality has persisted for centuries and continues into the present day. However, such binary thinking in black and white terms overlooks, in my opinion, a few things and is too short-minded for a number of reasons. Because the separation of art and science into two different cultures, let's say at least in the West, is relatively recent in human history. It took place during the 19th century, which incidentally or consequently coincides with the coining of the term scientist in the mid-1800s. And because of the fact that knowledge and science are in a constant state of evolution. What the sciences considered true 100 years ago, in many ways, has become outdated. So what do we not know today that our children will know in the future and take for granted? And last but not least, this way of thinking, this binary way of thinking, also somehow closes itself off from the complexity of the various dimensions of our shared experience of reality. But what do art and science have in common? Both domains, the arts and the sciences, are based on observation and interpretation, and are fundamentally oriented towards the exploration, discovery, and experience of the unknown. They both harness the greatest natural resource in the universe, our imagination. Artists and scientists develop what doesn't yet exist and operate from the perspective of what could be. Anything basically begins with a fiction of what could be. Art and science both render ideas about the world into a form that allows the viewer to connect to the idea. So the systemic and systematic intertwining of knowledge from the arts and knowledge from the sciences proves, in my opinion, to be a very promising means of developing new, experimental, and transformative modes of transgressive and collaborative knowledge production. Because intelligence, I believe, is inherently ecosystemic. Many kinds of minds are needed. Or as Donna Haraway would say, to be one, you have to be many. And currently, monodisciplinary sciences are facing very significant challenges. Over the past few decades, the number of published scientific and technological papers have been steadily increasing, yet the relevance and the effectiveness of these works are simultaneously diminishing. So profound breakthroughs resulting from new research findings are becoming increasingly unlikely. And at the same time, studies indicate that, for example, Nobel laureates are more inclined, compared to the typically monodisciplinary scientist, to engage in transdisciplinary activities, particularly those involving the arts. So these observations raise valid questions about the current state of monodisciplinary academic research and its capacity to generate innovative solutions and societal impact. I believe that the various challenges on literally all levels these days demand adaptable transdisciplinary approaches that bridge the gap between art and science without undermining the disciplinary autonomy of each field. The arts possess a very deep repertoire of strategies, of skills and perspectives that are highly complementary to the sciences. And honestly speaking, when confronted with the complex realities of today, where we have isolated humanity from nature, subject from object, and universities from the universe, it becomes exceedingly challenging for anyone but a poet or an artist to comprehend what the fuck is truly going on. So, no, actually I jumped. No, wait, I think apologies. I start with a quote. I might have put it in the wrong position. Here, this one I need. For too long, we have seen science and the arts as separate endeavors. But these silos were not always so. Through much of human history, the creative interface of different disciplines has been a catalyst for both innovation and healing. So this quote from an international renowned clinical scientist and the chief scientist of the World Health Organization, Sir Jeremy Farrar, echoes what I said earlier and gives our aim of discussing the centrality of the arts and health even more topical impetus, more gravity. A topic that has also been too long neglected by the health sector and should be seen as both central to the human experience and important in the maintenance of good health. So let me hopefully find the right quote here. No. Coming back to Chris. When we remember the WHO definition of health, which states that health is more than merely the absence of disease and infirmity, but the attainment of the highest level of physical, mental, and social well-being, then the value of the arts become apparent. Our measures should reflect this holistic approach, focusing not solely on reproduction of symptoms, but on how the arts may help us cope, achieve our potential to be productive and active members of our community. So that said, the healing arts here at the Berlin University of the Arts will look at the health benefits of the arts in creative expression, not solely from a medicalized, but also an artistic approach as well. So each other week, an expert from the field of medicine and medical science, an expert from the field of art and culture will enter into a conversation together. So picking up on what Sir Jeremy Farrar said earlier, anthropology, so the study of human societies and cultures and their development, has demonstrated us that in the early stages of human history, art, religion, and healing all developed within the same social context and environment, in the same space. And artistic expression has grown hand in hand with the development of human culture and has always been a crucial part of how we educate, learn, communicate, and heal. So from our distant ancestors who use storytelling to make sense of the world, we've evolved to absorb information through narratives, whether presented visually in the form of music or through live performances. Think here also of Ursula K. Le Guin's carrier bag theory of fiction, which disputes the idea that despair was the earliest human tool, proposing that the first cultural device, the earliest cultural invention, was probably a recipient, a container to hold gathered products, a carrier bag of sorts, also for stories. It's the story that makes the difference, and the arts are great storytellers and particularly effective in helping us grasp and convey complex ideas and emotions by engaging all our senses in our ability to empathize. It is also important that important to note that the first medieval universities in Europe typically consisted of 4 faculties: arts, law, medicine, and theology. However, the arts were considered as the prerequisite for gaining access to the other 3 faculties. So the 7 liberal arts, grammar, logic, rhetoric, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, were literally fundamental in early medical education. But enough of our trip down memory lane. Over the past 2 decades, there has been a major increase in research into the effects of the arts on health and well-being, alongside developments in practice and policy activities. A renowned report from the World Health Organization on arts and health from 2019 is proof of this. The report, downloadable for anyone, synthesizes the global evidence on the role of the arts in improving health and well-being. Here, results from over 3,000 studies identified a major role for the arts in the prevention of ill health, promotion of health, and management and treatment of illnesses across the lifespan. So this groundbreaking report essentially provides scientific evidence, including pilot studies, case studies, small-scale cross-sectional surveys, nationally representative longitudinal cohort studies, community-wide ethnographies, randomized controlled trials, etc., for the role of art in enhancing health and well-being, both in passive reception and active creation. Meaning, and this is amazing actually, artistic activities such as singing, playing music, dancing, acting, writing, or visual and intellectual creation, as well as the passive engagement with art, like reading a book, listening to a lecture, visiting an exhibition or a performance, a museum, a theater, or concert, improves well-being and health, particularly in the case of chronic diseases, whether they're physical or psychological in nature. So art can help us to cope emotionally with the challenges of illnesses or injury, and can aid in processing difficult emotions during times of crisis and hardship, and become a motivating factor in the recovery process. So incorporating the arts into healthcare has been shown to have a positive impact on patients' clinical outcomes, and it also benefits healthcare providers, the patient support system, and the broader community. So all of these findings naturally raise numerous questions. For example, where do the boundaries between art and science actually lie? Is medicine purely a science or also an art, and vice versa? Or is the truth somewhere in between? And what does healing actually mean? What do we understand by health and illness? What is even considered in need of treatment, and why? In a world that values constant physical activity, being able to move around, always being present and getting bigger and better, any kind of physical problem or issue means you might be left out or considered in need of treatment. So what kind of understanding do we really have of health, and what shapes our concept of a healthy life? Because health is not only medical, but also a political terrain on which social power relations play out. And how are all of these questions evaluated and explored in the fields of medicine and art? To what extent can artistic practices contribute to the medical improvement of health and the quality of life? How can creative and artistic activities be used therapeutically? And what can art and science learn from each other as complementary forms of knowledge? So these questions in particular demand research approaches that think beyond standard protocol. It's crucial that research, whether scientific or artistic, doesn't merely delve deep within its own fields, but also remains adaptable and relevant to others. In this context, I see this unique dialogue series as an exemplary indication of the development of a necessary transdisciplinary competence in a culture of collaborative cooperation. So we do not have to become fluid in one another's language, but we can try to become conversational, at least. Against this backdrop, it's my special intention to A, break down barriers, and to create alliances. This series of events, after all, calls upon all participants, meaning literally all, you and our guests and everyone that's joining us, to collaborate at the intersections of diverse backgrounds and knowledge, and to think and learn together. It's an open process, an open discourse, an explorative search, Suchbewegung, as you would say in German, beyond disciplinary boundaries, to which all of you are actively invited to participate. So now, let me briefly introduce you to the program and speakers of this series of conversations. Our first coupling will be between Professor Dr. Stefan Willich, who studied medicine in Berlin, Munich, and in New York. And before that, he actually studied violin, chamber music, and conducting in Stuttgart. He also has a Master of Public Health from Harvard University and a Master of Business Administration. And since 1995 already, he's professor and director of the Institute of Social Medicine, Epidemiology and Health Economics at the Charité Medical Center in Berlin. And from 2012 to 2014, he was the president of the Conservatory of Music, Hans Eisler, Berlin. He's also the founder and music director of the World Doctors Orchestra, and he's the president of the International Society for Arts and Medicine. And Stefan Willich will meet with Ayumi Powell, who also studied classical violin, and today works as a composer and an interdisciplinary artist. So actively engaging, listening, and the non-linearity of time, her projects research how sound and perception influence and how we relate to one another, and are often shared as kind of new languages, rituals, and heightened sensitivities, which can instantly be applied to everyday life. As the artist in residence at the Martin Gropiusbau in 2022, she transformed the museum into a place of a continuous song. And the way this is set up, and it's a huge experiment, we're doing it for the first time, so you're part of an experiment, is basically that each guest is asked to give a brief introduction, 10, 15 minutes tops, into their work, into their practice, and the rest is going to be a moderated dialogue. So I will act as the moderator, but you are basically the ones that can ask questions. I'll break the ice, I get it going, but it's really a moment for you to ask questions. And in all of the courses, those of you that know me, there's no such thing as a stupid question. It's a chance to really kind of dive into topics, and you have people here. So you really use that moment. And this also goes for our online audience, obviously. We have, I think, 50 plus people watching us online as well.
Yeah, they should just raise their hand and then we will call.
Perfect. So this is our first session, and we meet bi-weekly. Then we have Professor Dr. Med Benno Brinkhaus, who's a specialist in internal medicine with additional qualification in naturopathie, so Naturheilkunde and acupuncture. He studied medicine in Vienna and Düsseldorf, and since 2009 he's university professor for naturopathie, Naturheilkunde, naturopathy. Also at the Charité Medical Center in Berlin. He's also deputy director of the Institute for Social Medicine, Epidemiology and Health Economics. He set up the project area Complementary and Integrative Medicine and the University Outpatient Clinic for Naturopathie at the Charité. And he comes together with Edna. Edna Bonhomme is a historian of science, a cultural writer and editor based in Berlin, Germany. And she writes kind of feature articles, creative nonfiction, and book reviews, but she's also a graduate of the Princeton University's PhD program in the history of science. She holds awards and fellowships from the Max Planck Institute for History of Science, the Ludwig-Maximilian-Universität, the Carmago Foundation, and the Bolton for the Arts. Edna's book, A History of the World in 6 Plagues, is forthcoming. Edna is also the co-editor of the forthcoming book After Sex, an anthology about reproductive justice. So you already get an idea that we'll have wonderful clashes and juxtapositions here. Coming up next is psychiatrist and stress researcher, Professor Dr. Med Adli. He is the head physician of the Fliedner Clinic in Berlin and heads the research area Affective Disorders at the Department of Psychiatry and Psychotherapy at the Charité. He's also founder and chairman of the interdisciplinary forum Neurourbanistics, which is a working group of university professors, scientists, and practitioners from the fields of psychiatry, urban planning, psychology, neuroscience, architecture, and sociology, philosophy, and ethnography, whose aim is to shape cities that are worth living in and are beneficial to the mental health of their inhabitants. And he's going to meet with Paulina Schulz, aka DJ Gigola, that many of you maybe know, who is a very well-known music producer and DJ, but she's a trained medical doctor. And as I think we told in last week's juxtaposition series, when I got my first vaccination by coincidence, it was actually Paulina who gave me the shot. So her work, her artistic work, is full of tensions and contradictions, and in a very playful way she breaks down boundaries, continuously transforming and recontextualizing seemingly fixed concepts and stereotypes. Sounds familiar, huh? And her debut album, Fluid Meditation, which came out this year, in this she explores in 8 tracks shared aspects of meditation and the dance experience, fusing them into a new form of kind of introspective practice through the lens of guided meditation with spoken word. But despite all that, she studied medicine at the Charité and occasionally practices as a medical doctor. And then we have Professor Dr. Anne Berghofer, who's also here in the crowd today, who studied medicine in Berlin, followed by a residency in psychiatry. Since 2001, she has been senior scientist at the Institute of Social Medicine, Epidemiology and Health Economics at the Charité, and was appointed associate professor in 2022. Her scientific focus is on health services, research in psychiatric disorders, innovative mental health care models, health care in rural regions, and for disadvantaged population groups. She's also coordinator of the Charité network Arts and Medicine. And Anne is meeting with Prem Krishnamurti, who's a good friend and a designer, an author and educator, and his multifaceted work explores the role of art as an agent of transformation at an individual, collective, and structural level. So he received the Cooper Hewitt National Design Award for Communication Design in 2015, and the KW Institute for Contemporary Arts a year with residency fellowship in 2018. He has curated several large-scale exhibitions, including Front International in 2022, which was entitled "Oh Gods of Dust and Rainbows." And his book-length essay on letters was published last year, and he currently is directing workshops in the Department of Transformation. Then we have Professor Dr. Susanne Bauer, who is Professor of Music Therapy at the Berlin Career College of the Berlin University of the Arts. She is a graduate psychologist, a music therapist, and a systemic couple and family therapist. She received her doctorate on the topic of music therapy, emotions, perceptions, and schizophrenia. She's currently working on a treatment concept for the therapeutic group music therapy at the Wiegmann Clinic of the DRK Kliniken in West End, the Clinic for Psychotherapy and Psychosomatics. And Dr. Friedemann Schad serves as the head of the Department of Interdisciplinary Oncology and Palliative Care in the Center of Oncology at the Gemeinschaftskrankenhaus Havelhöhe, Berlin, and as the Deputy Medical Director and as a member of the hospital management. His scientific interests are clinical research in integrative medicine, multimodal treatment approaches, and early supportive care concepts in oncology. And for our very last session, we have Dr. Adak Pimoradi Sehuli, who is a specialist in psychosomatic medicine and psychotherapy. She currently heads the university outpatient clinic at the Benjamin Franklin campus of the Charité. In addition, she is a psychoanalyst and holds a master's degree in cultural studies from the Humboldt University. As chair of the board of the European Artists Guild for Medicine and Culture, she is committed to the integration of cultural aspects in medicine. And she is going to meet up with Natasha, Professor Dr. Natasha Kelly, who is the author and editor of 6 books, a curator and a visual artist. And her art installation was shown at diverse museums throughout Germany. And she holds a PhD and an MA in communication studies and sociology. And she has taught at various universities in Germany, Austria, and the USA, and is currently actually visiting professor for cultural studies in the Studium Generale at the Berlin University of the Arts. So I can't even start to express my excitement for this incredible lineup in our conversations to come with all of you. So, coming to an end now, I hope that in learning with and from one another over the course of this semester, we will all maybe discover and identify novel perspectives, elective affinities, parallel interests, productive misunderstandings, and semiotic collisions. In my capacity as visiting professor for transdisciplinary artistic education here at the UDK Berlin, and as initiator and moderator of the series of encounters in arts and medicine, I'm personally driven by what the philosopher and educational reformer John Dewey described as the basic requirement for any teacher, and which I hope will be infectious for you too. It's a lifelong passion for knowledge, a genuine love, an unusual aptitude for learning, and an inherent intellectual curiosity beyond textbook knowledge. So this is about a kind of discovery of one's own language in confrontation and communication with others. Eine Sprachfindung im Gegenüber. It's about listening first before speaking, or practicing, in the words of the great German poet Hölderlin, a listening method of procedure. He calls it the hinhörende Verfahrensart. So today, more than ever, it is essential that we learn the art of deep listening and engaging in meaningful dialogue while staying open to diverse perspectives. Because despite our differences, we share a common humanity. Given the pressing global challenges we face, we must adapt an integrative approach to secure a sustainable and healthy life for every individual and for our planet as a whole. There is actually no alternative. Kind of the lone fighter idea of solitary expertise in a singular field is no longer sustainable. Cognitive diversity is indispensable for effective problem solving. And even though numerous further studies, investigations are probably required to fully establish the relationship between art and medicine, and even if attempting to quantitatively test and scientifically prove its relationship may be fundamentally challenging, we can readily affirm art can heal, and what you do with it matters. It might be worthwhile to exercise what's called scientific humility here, because just because we can't explain something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. As the Gödel incompleteness theorem, one of the most important results in modern mathematics and logic, has taught us, there are always infinitely many things we don't know or can't know. We will never even become close to a situation where we know everything. In this sense, there is still much work to be done. Thank you very much for your attention. Be well and stay curious.